Good evening, good morning, wherever you are. Welcome to Speed City F1 on SiriusXM. We are so excited because we are up for round 3 of the Formula One season in Australia. This is John Massengill sitting in the studio in Austin. In the studio with me, Les Kaiser.
Howdy, howdy.
And over Zoom, we have Mr. Bob Varsha. How are you, Bob?
Sunday morning, everybody. At least it is here on the East Coast.
That's right. Jonathan Green is not going to be with us. I don't think he's going to be with us. He's been out at Circuit.
I can't blame him, to be honest.
He's been out at Circuit of the Americas all weekend, and he's doing the MotoGP commentary out there and causing mayhem out there. And and by the way, Chris Medland, who's been joining us for all of this season, was supposed to join us, but he's under the weather, so he is not going to be joining us. He's in Melbourne, but not feeling very well, so he is not going to join us. But we have lots to talk about, lots going on, a fantastic qualifying, crazy action in qualifying. So we got a lot of that. We got lots of clips from all the drivers that we got from Formula One, so we got lots to play for you. Bob, let's start with you, my friend. I know this circuit is one that we've been going to for many years, but it's not the same, is it?
No, not at all. And before we go any farther, have you spoken with Chris? How's he feeling? He went to the hospital, so it must be something worth paying some attention to.
I did speak with him over email several times in WhatsApp.
Oh, okay.
And he just, he's actually said he was feeling a little better today. But you're right. It must have been pretty rough for him because, when we did our Wednesday show, that we do on SiriusXM, he sounded rough already, and he thought, it was jet lagged, and his voice was really rough. If you go back and listen to that, you can hear it. But yeah, he was feeling really, really poorly, and but I hear they have good medical down in Australia, so he should be in good hands down there. So, but yeah, he's definitely feeling better.
Yeah, well, it's probably all that jet airplane air, if you follow me.
Yep.
Yes, it's great to be back in Melbourne. The Australian race has always been one of the most anticipated races of the year, mainly because of the personalities of the Australian people. They are a party-hardy group. They support their race, and it was just a tragedy that they lost it the last couple of years due to the pandemic. The track has been modified a great deal. They took out one tight chicane, made some longer, faster sweeping corners. They basically took two harsh turns out of the track and repaved the entire thing, which hadn't been done since, the mid-90s. And so it's a different kind of racetrack. As you pointed out, we've seen lots of surprises, not so much owing to the track itself, but to the fact that now you've got a new track and these still unfamiliar cars and these still unfamiliar 18-inch wheels and tires on these cars. So there's a lot of questions needing to be answered, and a lot of teams who need those answers pretty darn quickly, including Mercedes.
You know, I'm curious about how much changing they're actually going to be able to do, and of course, stay within the boundaries of the requirements. But I'm always curious about this. I was speaking with Adam Andretti this morning about this, and he's like, "You just keep watching." He goes, "Things are going to they're going to fine tune everything. They're going to find it. They're going to get it all set." And then he goes, "I think it's going to wind up looking like last year."
I was going to say, finish that sentence for you. You mean Mercedes is going to start winning and then win it all?
Yeah.
That's not going to happen.
They got a long way to go to get there. Although, granted, Mercedes did a great job coming to this track. Maybe it favors their aero setup or whatever. We now have 4 Mercedes in the top 8 positions, along with 2 Red Bulls, a Ferrari, and a Renault, or I should say an Alpine. Now, Mercedes has got a lot of work to do. And I'd say it's going to be difficult. We all know the Haas story. They decided to send the crashed chassis home from Saudi Arabia, and they built up the spare car for Mick Schumacher, and he's driving it well this weekend. But they were without spares, so if they're looking forward to getting to the race. I'm sorry, I'm having a little trouble articulating here tonight. they're worried about having enough spares to have two complete race cars on the grid. So, when they go back to Europe and they get back into their factories and back into their haulers and what have you, things will be a lot better. So they're rolling the dice a bit. But in a way, everybody, I think, is in that same boat. There are only so many parts with these brand new cars. And if you start breaking things, you're going to put yourself in a hole.
Bob, I was going to say the same thing when you said everybody, because this is going to be an issue for every team. Because, look, we're at another street circuit here. We could easily see more big crashes, more expensive crashes like Mick Schumacher's was. That was a nightmare for the Haas team. They say was over $1 million, and you think, okay, $1 million in Formula One, but not when the salary cap is $145 million now. So this is going to be an issue for all the teams going forward. And I don't know if you guys saw this, but there's been discussion. There is provisions already in here, and I bet you guys have heard this, where there can be extra money spent in certain situations it was something like for large crashes. It was a simple term like that, large crashes. They didn't define it. They didn't say a dollar amount, I don't think. They didn't say particular crash structures or anything. They just said, when you have a big crash, there could be provisions for spending more money.
That'll be interesting how it plays out because, yes, there's been some whoppers already this season. And, in fact, this weekend, there's some pretty big ones. We'll get into that here shortly.
Well, I hope everybody's fueled up on some coffee. Get yourself a cup of coffee and stick with us because this is going to be...
Is that F1 flavored? I see the logo.
That is F1 flavor. That's my new Christmas
Good to the last drop.
It is. But yeah, guys.
10% ethanol.
There you go.
No, this is the new synthetic fuel. It has no emissions, so you'll be happy to know that.
No, thank you. It's rather confined in this studio.
Right. So yes, we had lots to look forward to, lots to talk about here because we've talked about the new surface. We don't really know what to expect because we got new cars, like Bob said, new cars, new tires. But let's take a look at a little bit about what's going on, has happened so far. We got Charles Leclair on pole, and what I thought was kind of funny is it was Carlos Sainz. Did you hear what kept him from having a good qualifying? He had a simple starter problem.
Right. And it cost him essentially, I think they said most of one lap to get that sorted and get out back into the groove again on course.
Yep.
Yeah, he was lined up with Charles Leclerc, and his car would not start as Leclerc, his teammate, drove away. When they finally got him running, he got out there, and just as he was coming around to start his push lap, Sainz that is, Fernando Alonso had his accident. The red flag soured any chance that Carlos Sainz had of getting a hot lap in. Otherwise, we would surely see the other Ferrari up there mixing it up with the Red Bulls.
Well, Bob, before we get too far into the grid, I'm going to say that for the next segment. I want to talk about the DRS zones because before the weekend started, we had 4 DRS zones, and now we have 3. And if you're a fan of passing, you immediately go, hey, wait a minute, I want more DRS zones. But this plays right into what we've been seeing, all these games actually that we've been seeing, where the guys were holding back because they didn't want to be the last man out right before the last corner or before the finish line. So what do you think about this reduction from 4 to 3, Bob?
Well, more is not always better. And there was a lot of talk about how the Saudi battle between Charles Leclerc and Max Verstappen keyed around the final DRS zone on that racetrack. And it made things exciting, and it was great. I honestly don't know how 4 DRS zones would work. And I'm with you. Do you have guys backing off to try to get the advantage, to get behind a car with the DRS on the following straightaway and preserve your track position that way? I have no problem with eliminating 1. I think 2 DRS zones in Albert Park in Melbourne would have been great. So we're going to have 3. We'll see how that works.
Yeah, I agree with you. I was thinking I hadn't really had time to study it by the time they pulled the 4th one. But when I first heard it, I was like, wow, we've got 4. I'm not sure how that's going to work, but we'll see how 3 works. It's going to be very interesting. And it was funny. We actually got to see almost a race during qualifying. At the very end, after all the crashing went on, we saw what was essentially was almost a race. Magnussen was racing a little bit. That was interesting, that part of it. But what about the crashes in qualifying, Les? What did you think about that?
I'm wondering how much of that was a result of the reduced curving atmosphere we had, straightening out some of the curves, things like that. Because realize when you do that and you're putting down fresh asphalt, you've got that, and then you've got this is a faster track now. It's a couple of things. I'm not sure. The combination is going to be interesting to me in how that will play out uh, because it is significantly different.
I thought it was interesting looking at that Stroll Latifi crash again.
Yeah.
That the radio conversations with both drivers was, what is that what doing?
Yeah.
And finally, of course, they slapped a 3 grid spot penalty on Lance Stroll. And I heard a quote from Stroll in the interview corral after qualifying, and it was clear that somebody went up to him and said, "Hey, look, this one's on you. You turned into him." There was a certain amount of just bad luck in that whole situation because Latifi was trying to get by through a hole that was rapidly closing. But yeah, it was definitely on Stroll to create that crash. And of course, ironically, Latifi's car suffered much more damage than Stroll's did. But the way the Aston Martins are running right now, it's hard to tell whether the car is broken or not.
Yeah, I know. Unless you're talking about the Aston Martin scooters, I think those we've seen are running flawlessly, and I think they have more laps.
Yeah.
Hey,
yeah.
guys, let's play a
but to
clip
be
from
sure,
Lance Stroll right now.
We got to make sure everybody understands Lance Stroll is starting off in the 22nd, 23rd slot on the grid now.
Well, let's hear from Lance Stroll right now.
Yeah, big thanks to the guys. I mean, they worked really hard, and it's a shame we had a terrible day. But yeah, it was a very awkward situation. What happened on a cool down lap, and Nicholas let me go, and then the track falls to the right there, and as he accelerated, it felt like I said, it falls to the right and it gets very narrow, and the timing was just really bad, I guess, and yeah, that's what caused the collision.
Were you expecting him to go that way around you?
He went all of a sudden, very suddenly, and like I said, it falls to the right, so the car kind of dips to the inside as the track falls away there, and I think the timing was just terrible. As he was accelerating, the track was falling to the right for me, and that's where we made contact.
Okay, well, now let's hear the Latifi side of the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, that's what it felt like from behind the wheel, and then just before coming here to the media pen, I've just seen the video as well, and kind of even confirms that, what my feeling was. Yeah, I mean, for me, it's quite clear. I mean, I let him by because I was told he was on a push lap. He obviously must have backed off a corner or two before. And then, yeah, I just kind of wanted to get back by him to carry on with my cool-down lap and get my tire preparation correct. It was a gap, big gap at the time. I went for it, and then for whatever reason, once I got alongside him, we decided to turn in. So, yeah, not much to say besides that.
Kind of thing you'll go and chat about with him later on?
I mean, I'm sure we're both going to get called to the stewards, but I mean, there's not really anything to say. I mean, I've seen the video. It's clearly his fault. He probably wasn't looking in the mirrors on the cool-down lap. We're both on cool-down laps, fine, but I mean, still not my fault. I mean, clearly turned into me. So yeah, I don't think there's going to really be anything needing to be said, to be honest.
And just a big job for the guys at the team to get the car ready for tomorrow.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing. It's a lot of damage. I mean, it was such a small impact in terms of the actual crash itself, but it just has such big consequences because of how the crash was, doing quite a few corners, and yeah, it's a shame. Obviously, coming off of a few crashes as well, so it's the last thing I would have wanted, but you know, it's just bad luck.
Clearly, the other guys, both of them say it's the other guy.
Of course. But, I will say I'll give a little bit of benefit or doubt to Stroll that if you look at that approach, Latifi may have actually not been in sight of the mirror. And so, there's a possibility there's that question. Without sitting in Stroll's seat and actually seeing the mirror's view, he might have innocently enough went over that direction.
Only those two guys know the answer to that question.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, let's take a break. We'll hit the reset button, come back. We got lots more for you. Listen to Speed City F1 on SiriusXM. Back after these messages.
Hello to everyone. This is Gunther Steiner. This is Speed City.
You're listening to Speed City F1 on SiriusXM.
Yeah, it's Gunther's birthday, I think, on Friday.
Yeah, it was this week. I do recall that.
And
you just got to wonder what that birthday party would be like.
lots of F-bombs is what I'm envisioning.
I wasn't invited.
Yeah, I think he was the guest on the television coverage. They kept going to him. But, hey, guys, I want to get a word in from our sponsor. CrowdStrike presents Driven in 60. Our digital world is more than just interconnected. It's interdependent. And because of that, security is a top concern for every organization. The Mercedes-AMG Petronas F1 team knows they're a potential target for a host of digital attacks, which is why they leverage the CrowdStrike Falcon platform to deploy end-to-end security solutions. CrowdStrike revolutionized cybersecurity by harnessing the speed and power of the cloud to identify and stop the most sophisticated cyber attacks. Our cloud-native Falcon platform protects and defends organizations against increasingly complex threats, so you can have the peace of mind to focus on your business momentum, not what's trying to stop it. That's protection that powers you. To learn more and to try CrowdStrike Falcon free today, visit crowdstrike.com/XM. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in on YouTube. We got some people listening there. We've got T&W in Thailand. We got Alex is asking, should I stay up for this? Of course you should, Alex, because we're only 3 rounds in. We got new cars, new wheels, new track, new tires, new everything. It's going to be, if it's as exciting as the first 2, then you should stay up, Alex. I think you should do it. And now the question would be, should you stay up for a post-race show? I wouldn't do it. It's too it's too late.
Yeah, but you don't have a choice.
If you insist. Yeah.
It's too late. It's too late. John Nyquist joining us from San Francisco. See, it's only 9:20 in San Francisco. They're like partying. It's perfect for them. So thanks, everybody, for tuning in there. Hey, speaking of the West Coast, same time zone, I think. We've got to talk a little bit about Vegas. We're going to talk a lot about Vegas in the post-race show. But, boys, we have 3 races next year in the United States. How crazy awesome is that? Bob, you're grinning ear to ear.
Oh, absolutely. I think it's a great thing for the Formula One fans in the United States and for the sport. Certainly, all the teams want to be here. The sponsors want to be here. And I'm sure that they'll put on a great show out in Vegas. We've talked about this before here on the show. It's something Formula One has wanted for many years. And there's sort of proof of that in an article I read in the Las Vegas newspaper, that there's an individual out there, an entrepreneur, who has come forward and objected to Formula One promoting that race, because he says he's been working on getting a Formula One race in Las Vegas for a decade. And he has a document, a letter from Bernie Ecclestone when he was in a position to run the business. And Bernie told him, I'd be glad to sign a contract as soon as you provide your bona fides in terms of your ability to pull this thing off. So one way and another, the folks from Formula One, the F1 group, basically sent him a cease and desist order. And and now the lawsuits are flying. And the big question is whether this contretemps is going to prevent the Las Vegas race from going off next year as it has planned. And it's interesting because back in the early 90s, we had a very similar situation with the Phoenix Grand Prix, the Iceberg US Grand Prix, as it was called, around the streets of Phoenix. Somebody said that they had the rights to run a Formula One race in Phoenix, and someone else actually did it. And yeah, once again, the lawyers did just fine.
I saw that same article, Bob, and I was actually laughing. I was going, okay, this guy's dusted off this Bernie Ecclestone document from who knows how long ago. And right. I think Formula One did the right thing by immediately getting their legal team to start out squashing it. But you never know. So I don't know. That could probably be at the worst case scenario, take a check and go away. But I'm not too concerned about that. I thought that the little production they put on, that little half-hour show to announce it, was I was just excited because they did it. It didn't look super polished, but it was great, and that they did it, that they had enough, interest to make it its own little show. So I was excited about that. I was glued to the television for sure.
I think, yeah, I was talking to some folks from Vegas this past weekend and last weekend, and I was interested because some of them were somewhat motorsport savvy, and they said, oh, they hadn't really heard anything. Are you talking about IndyCar coming back, or is it out at the racetrack? And it was like, no, it's right down the middle of town. Come on.
It's
And
got
so
the Bellagio fountain in the background.
yeah, I was a little disappointed that locals that had a motorsport interest didn't hear about it, that aren't avid F1 fans, but I rectified that right quick.
Well, Bob Varsha, you want to give us the rundown of what happened, just the order of qualifying, and then we'll discuss that because there's lots to talk about there.
Okay, let's give it a shot. Up on row one, for the first time in the hybrid era, we're talking back to 2014 when hybrid powertrains became the rule in Formula One. Somebody other than Lewis Hamilton is starting from pole in Melbourne at the Australian Grand Prix. Charles Leclair in his Ferrari F175 starts from pole for the 11th time in his career. And I mentioned earlier that the changes they made to the racetrack made it fast. Hold that thought. Max Verstappen is to his outside in P2, a position Verstappen has never been in Melbourne. Yeah, we lost a couple of runnings of the race to the pandemic, but Verstappen has never been that close to the front. He can take comfort in the fact that the last 2 years, the winner of the race has come for second or third on the grid. On row two, Sergio Perez in the second Red Bull, who was the fastest car in a straight line at 200 miles an hour, almost on the button. Think about that. On a road course, a temporary circuit, they're going 200 miles an hour. Yeah. I think that's just incredible. Then in P4, Lando Norris in the McLaren, the first of the Mercedes-powered cars. He outqualified the factory cars. And obviously, Mercedes is surging, and McLaren is beginning to regain the form that we all thought they would have during off-season testing. In the fifth spot, Lewis Hamilton will be inside row three, having outqualified his teammate George Russell, who starts sixth. On row four, we'll have Daniel Ricciardo on the inside, the only Australian driver in this year's race. He's in the second McLaren. Next to him, Esteban Ocon in the Alpine A522. Then P9 is Carlos Sainz Jr. We talked about his problems. He was just crushed not to be able to get a legitimate push lap in, which would have put him much further up the grid, no doubt. On to row 10 on the outside, row 5 on the outside in the P10 spot is Fernando Alonso, which is kind of ironic because it was Alonso's breakdown that brought out the red flag that prevented Carlos Sainz from being able to get in that push lap that he needed so badly. Alonso, by the way, is on his third internal combustion engine this year. That's all you get. So here we are, third race of the year, and we're talking about engine penalties for Fernando Alonso. On row 6, Pierre Gasly in the first of the Alpha Tauris. Next to him, Valtteri Bottas in the Alfa Romeo. Valtteri Bottas, and I didn't know about this till I read it in the literature, as they say. Bottas had gone a string of 103 straight races.
I saw that.
Without failing to get to Q3. I think that's just astonishing, but he didn't get there this time. He starts 12th, so that run almost twice the second place number in terms of making it to Q3 consecutive races. That record is going to stand for a long time. On row 7, Yuki Tsunoda in the second Alpha Tauri. And in the 14th spot, Zhou Guanyu in the second Alfa Romeo. On row 8, Mick Schumacher, for the first time, outqualifies his Haas teammate, Kevin Magnussen. And Magnussen is always good in Melbourne. So that says a lot about Mick coming off that horrible crash in the Middle East. On row 9, Sebastian Vettel. Vettel has a total of 26 laps thus far this year for Aston Martin. Yeah, he got COVID and he missed a couple of races, but the car has failed him time and again, and he is desperately short of practice time and car development time. Next to him on row 9 is Nicholas Latifi, who suffered at the hands of Lance Stroll, who will start on the inside of row 10 due to a 3 grid spot penalty for causing a collision. And in the 22nd and final position, Alex Albon in the Williams, because, and this is a really tough way to lose all of your hot laps in qualifying, he did not have the required liter of fuel in the tank at the end so that it could be scrutinized, if you will, and measured. I haven't heard of that one in a long time.
Yeah, that has been a while.
Before. Yeah. So there you have it.
Yeah. Man, there is a lot to think about here because, like, we talk about how fast the cars, the Red Bull cars were. They've been fast this year. But I'm looking right now at both Norris and Ricciardo and the McLarens. First time they've looked this good this year. This is kind of where we're kind of getting used to seeing them. And then I'm comparing them to Bottas and Magnussen, who have looked so good. But I feel like Haas may be a bit of a sleeper this weekend because Magnussen wasn't feeling good, right? And they're coming off spending all this energy getting Schumacher's car back and up and running again. If they got all these things, if Magnussen's health is back up to good and they've got all the things sorted out with the cars, then maybe we see Magnussen moving up and getting into the points into this race. And can McLaren maintain the speed that we saw in qualifying during the race? Those are the first things that jump out of me. What about you, Les?
I'm right there with you. I loved seeing Daniel Ricciardo and Lando up there.
I did like it. Yes, I'm excited, but
you know, I was I got to say I was kind of surprised. Daniel Ricciardo looked better than he wound up. And, you know, part of that was some of the timing of things in the thing. He didn't like his last lap. Heard of some of that. I really think McLaren has potential for really taking it to the Mercedes team.
Well, and McLaren, and I'm looking at, so Lewis Hamilton's 5th and 6th for George Russell. You know, that's kind of where they have been this year. You know, they're higher than that in the Constructors' Championship just because of the way things have fallen out. But that's kind of where they've fallen out. But I'm kind of like what we were joking about at the beginning. I keep waiting for that other shoe to drop and Mercedes to pick up and start repairing the problems they're having. But
I just like the idea of McLaren beating the primary Mercedes team.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. And you heard the comments from both Lewis Hamilton and his teammate George Russell afterward. I mean, Hamilton was pretty upbeat. I'm sure he was glad to be as far up as he is, knowing what he does about the shortcomings of the race car. But poor George Russell, oh my gosh, he sounded, you know, like he was going to need to be on suicide watch, which is really hard to understand. But I guess, you know, maybe it's the residual effects of thinking he was going to be in the catbird seat, moving to the Mercedes factory team, and suddenly, you know, life is difficult again.
Yeah, all he's got to do is look back over his shoulder down to where Williams is now and go, okay, I think this is definitely the right move.
Yeah, right.
But,
yeah.
Well, guys, let's get a quick break in, and when we come back, we'll continue to break down this qualifying, and we're going to get ready. We'll be about a half hour from the Australian Grand Prix. Take another sip of coffee and join us back here in just a moment.
From BBC F1, you are listening to Speed City.
You're listening to Speed City F1 on SiriusXM.
All right, welcome to your Saturday night edition, early Sunday morning edition, and we are excited to be here. And I think we're going to talk a little bit about, I want to talk about Sergio Perez because I thought he might have the pole again, and he looked fantastic. And I think he was a little disappointed. And in fact, let's play a little clip from Sergio right now.
It's a bit of a mess for us because we never really got to try our strategy with the tires. So we went into it in Q3, and yeah, just to find out that the double push was not any better, and we just carried the extra fuel. So yeah, I think the best was P2 that we could have done, but I don't think pole was possible today.
We're hearing that you have to go and see the stewards about the yellow flags. What are your thoughts on that moment?
Yeah, I lifted for more than half a second just on the straight, and I lost 6/10 or so. So I think it should be a straightforward thing.
Great stuff. Good luck.
I lifted for half a second.
Hey, he's a Formula.
Okay, well,
hey, I'm surprised you didn't say 3.5 tenths or something.
Right,
because
right.
he's a Formula One driver.
I lifted. I mean, I thought about it.
Yeah.
There you go. That's all you need.
I'd be interested to know what their tire strategy was. It sounded like, from what he was saying, that double push meant they were going to try to get 2 hot laps out of a set of tires to check things like, degradation and wear and that sort of thing. I don't know what prevented them from doing that, but I guess they just got a little bit off the beam.
All right, guys, I want to give out the phone number in case anybody wants to join us. It's 512-643-5483, 512-643-LIVE. We've got a gentleman holding. In fact, let's go to him. Let's go to Alex. He's in Florida. And, excuse me, Alex, how are you?
Hey, I'm good, guys. How are you?
Doing great.
Doing
Thanks
great.
for calling in.
What's going on?
Well, I was looking here, and the only 2 teams that do not have points this season are Aston Martin and Williams. And they're finding themselves at the back of the grid yet again. They're in the last 4 spots. I was wondering, what do you guys think the level of concern at those 2 teams is right now?
I'm going to throw it to you, Bob, on Aston. But I think if both of them, I would be very concerned right now. I mean, it's such a everything new, right? New cars, new tires, new wheels, everything, salary cap, aerodynamic caps, CFD time, all these different things. But I think very concerned.
Yeah, and this has just been a bad weekend for both teams. I mean, when an Aston Martin crashes into a Williams and takes them both out of qualifying, I mean, you really know you got out of the wrong side of the bed this morning. But having said that, we do know that Aston Martin is thinking of moving away from the Mercedes engine. We know that Audi and Porsche are waiting in the wings. They're waiting for the final engine regulations for 2026 and thereafter to be published, at which point we fully expect those 2 German companies, Porsche and Audi, to come on board. Audi wanted an entire factory team. They spoke to McLaren. McLaren said, no, we're not going to do that. So apparently Audi has gone to Aston Martin, and I guess they'll work something out with them. And keep in mind, when our old friend Otmar Szafnauer, the American who's been working in Formula One for decades now, said he wasn't going to be leaving what is now the Aston Martin team. And then just a few weeks later, it was announced he was moving over to Alpine, and he was asked why. And he said, well, you can't have 2 popes, which everybody assumed meant that he had butted heads with the team owner, Lawrence Stroll, who is a very intimidating personality and not a man who takes lightly to lack of performance. So, yeah, I think there's a lot of concern. I think Aston Martin's in a difficult place, both on the track and off from a team morale perspective. And Williams, yeah, they just had a problem. But I mean, Latifi gets crashed into by Lance Stroll, and Alex Albon doesn't have enough fuel in the car. We don't know how good the Williams could be if they would just stop shooting themselves in the foot.
Bob, I got a question. How much longer and how much more is Dad going to take before he fires his son?
Oh,
good question.
Because it's business. Yeah. He put kiddo in the seat, but this is business.
Mm-hmm. I'm wondering how long it's going to be before Dad fires himself. I don't think it's ever going to happen.
I don't think so.
Barring a nice, smooth exit strategy. the worst is yet to come for Aston Martin, I think.
Well, Bob, is it true that Aston Martin is going to release a moped scooter?
Just so they can put Sebastian Vettel's name on it.
I think there's
that
something
was a
to be
tough
done.
situation. For those of you who don't know the story, Sebastian's car let him down again in free practice. I think it was on Friday, and started smoking. So he helped the track marshals get some body work off and get the source of the flames put out. And then the track marshals told him he could go back to the pits. And he said, "Is there a scooter around?" And a guy pulled one out from behind the wall and said, "Here, I'll give you a lift back to the pits." And Sebastian said, "Well, can I drive myself?" And the track marshal said, "Sure, off you go." Well, it turns out the rule states that you cannot be on the track within 5 minutes of the end of a session. It's essentially still a hot track, and you can't be out there doing any of this sort of thing. And Sebastian's quite logical response was, well, the rule says I can do that if I get the permission of a track official. And this track marshal said, "Here's the scooter, off you go." But they still slapped him with a €5,000 penalty.
Yikes.
Interesting. You know, Sebastian, when they were here with the classic cars using them for the driver's parade, Sebastian talked the owner of the Shelby Cobra into letting him drive that himself for the parade. So he's not adverse to driving himself.
Hey, I got a couple comments on YouTube. Tom James says, hoping to see Alonso and Bottas go forward today. I think everybody wants that. Most everybody. Not everybody, but most everybody. Let's see. TNW says, was cool seeing Perez drive the Aussie supercar. Yes. Yes, I've ridden in an Aussie supercar around Circuit of the Americas. Did you do that, Les, also? Or were you not? You didn't get to? Anyway, I was not rubbing that in.
Yeah.
Anyway, Lon says he's in Guam. And he says 2:30 here, same time zone as Australia. He said, hype for the race. Nice listening to you all. Let's go K-Mag and Mick. And we agree with that for sure. Definitely rooting for our Haas boys today. Am I just being my eternal optimist when I say that I feel like the Haas team is K-Mag's going to get better. They've got the car figured out for Mick that they're going to do better. And who knows? Maybe this is a double points weekend. Maybe
I think
9-10 or something.
I think there were benefits to having the two rookies in seats last year. But, you know, I think they ironed out a lot of those things that were issues, and I don't think they were necessarily driver-related. And so, you know, remember we talked to Gunther back when they did that, and I said, you know, we asked him, said, is this just kids get in the car and drive? And he kind of said, yeah, it was. But then now having K-Mag back, I think they can refine it a little further and potentially use these cars to really stay up in the points range and in the pack. Is honestly the way I feel is K-Mag brought some skill back and some experience.
Mm-hmm. Hey, I think we've got a clip from K-Mag, don't we, Les?
I believe we do.
Let's see if the producer can find that faster than me, because I want to play that. I mean, I know he was not feeling all perfect this weekend, so let's see if we got that one here.
I do not see it.
We don't have that one.
That.
We'll see if we can grab that one. But let's see, what's our time clock here? We've got about 16 minutes to the start of the race, and I just want to finish up here qualifying because there was a couple of more parts and pieces of that story that I was looking at. And I mean, look, first of all, I want to talk about Leclair. I mean, we said he was on pole, but man, does he look so smooth. And the car, I know it wasn't the fastest car, but to me, it looks the most planted. I saw a little porpoising today, not a lot. And it's funny, I didn't see any porpoising in, I think it was in Saudi. I didn't see any in the Ferrari car. But man, do you guys agree that Ferrari car looks so, I mean, I guess planted, I keep coming back to it.
I definitely do. I'm glad to see the Ferrari performing the way it was. I mean, Charles Leclerc is a fun guy and a good personality, and I like how diplomatic he is in his sticky situations sometimes. Kind of like that.
Yep. All right, well, let's take our last break, and then we'll be under 15 minutes before the race. You're listening to Speed City F1. We're live in Austin, Texas, and we'll be back after a quick break.
Hi, this is Max Verstappen, and you're listening to Speed City.
You're listening to Speed City F1 on SiriusXM.
All right, welcome back. We're getting close. You've made it this far. Have one more cup of coffee, and then you'll be blasted and ready to go. What do you got, Les?
There you go. D. Snelson, North Carolina. Thanks for joining the conversation on Facebook. Caught a long nap during the less than exciting NASCAR race. Ooh.
Oh, burn.
So I'm hoping the F1 race will keep me up. Happy to catch the pre-race show. Well, thanks for tuning in. And also made a comment, aren't Porsche, Audi all under the VW umbrella? Yes.
Yes, they are.
Yes, they are.
Yes, they are. So, and they were actually, Porsche was tied to the new spec for the power units that we'll be seeing in the next phase of power unit adjustments. So I do find it interesting. We've had some conversations about that probably would not expect to see a Porsche factory car on grid, but more than likely Porsche will be providing some power units.
Well, we'll see how that plays out. I've heard
I'm ready
all
for that.
kinds of different rumors. I am too.
You know,
hey, the Speed City F1 pre-race show on SiriusXM is brought to you by CrowdStrike. Stop today's most sophisticated cyber attacks at the office, the racetrack, and everywhere in between. Learn more at crowdstrike.com/XM. Let's see, boys. We're getting close here, and I'm looking at the grid, and I saw, by the way, a flash of teeth on the screen, and it was Daniel Ricciardo's smile.
Of course.
I think I even saw that in the night sky. And Daniel Ricciardo, I mean, the hometown has definitely come out for Daniel, and you have to be rooting for him. And I mean, he's such a likable guy. But in all honesty, I was saying, who knows where they'll be today? But what do you guys think? What do you think that Daniel and Lando could end up today?
Oh, I'd love to see him bump up beyond Mercedes. I don't think that's going to happen for Hamilton, but George Russell maybe. I'm good with it. I think they're going to have an excellent battle amongst those four today.
All right. So, what do you think, Bob?
I think Lando will be just fine where he is. I don't see him moving forward. I think Daniel, he could get to fifth, I think, but I don't see him moving up much higher than that.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so
well, you're basically saying the same thing because you just said he might be able to get past Russell.
Yeah, I think so. But if you're going to call him fifth, that means somebody ahead of him is going to have to drop out, and that's Charles, Max, Sergio, and
that's
Lando,
true.
And Lewis. Who do you think's going to drop out of that first five, Bob?
Actually, I should have said sixth. Daniel Ricciardo was sixth. I think he can get by George Russell. I think Russell's attitude right now just seems to be so poor that it's bound to affect his driving. And, who knows how Lewis's car will stand up under the pressure, or Sergio Perez, who is so fearless that I think his courage gets him into some tough situations sometime. Am I being realistic? No, but like you said, John, everybody wants to pull for Danny Rick here in his home race, and he could really use a good result. And I think if he gets anywhere near the podium, that'll be a good result, considering all that they've been through since the beginning of the season.
Well, we got a clip of George Russell talking about exactly what you're talking about, boys. So let's hear from George Russell.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's a bit of a surprise to get pipped by one of the McLarens, and they seemingly very fast this weekend. Definitely on low fuel, I think we should be quicker than them tomorrow. But it is what it is at the moment. I think we're still learning, still trying to understand. The car wasn't perfect out there, it's bouncing around a lot. And that was really limited into the fast corners, and that's where I lost all my lap time. But yeah, I think P5, P6 would have taken prior to this session.
It looks like it's going to be a challenging afternoon if the car is bouncing a lot for all of those laps out there.
Yeah.
What do you think is possible? Just keeping in that position?
I mean, I think there's no reason why we can't finish ahead of McLaren. We need to try and keep Sainz behind us. Don't really know what happened with him today, but he's clearly a lot quicker than us at the moment. So all things going well, P4, P5, they probably won't be quite as straightforward as that.
Right.
I think that's what worries me about Mercedes getting faster. I say worries me because you know what I mean by that. But
Yeah.
is because if they can get this porpoising, this bouncing under control, imagine how fast they're going to be, because that car is still bouncing like crazy and they're hanging in. They're just outside the podium here. So, hey, we got lots of good comments on YouTube coming in. Jose says he's with the Haas gang. S-Men says, I'm personally thrilled to see Ferrari back at the sharp end of the grid. It's been quite some time. I think there's a lot of folks that agree with that. TNW Thailand says, no shoey today is his prediction on that.
Oh, man.
Tom James says, Alonso, exclamation. I see him in the top 3 by the end of the season. He's looked great, hasn't he?
He has looked excellent.
And Alex was replying to your NASCAR thing, your NASCAR comment. He says, IndyCar quality was good today, though. Grosjean looked good. Man, I love me some Grosjean.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
He's one of my favorites for sure.
From Arkansas, we've got a comment that reminding us that all jewelry is to be removed for the race. But apparently Lewis is still wearing something.
All jewelry and all non-flame retardant underwear?
What's that say for Commando?
I think Commando's okay.
Oh, if you say so.
I'm not saying so. It's not my rule to
I'm not inspecting.
But
chestnuts roasting on an open fire.
There you go. That's
Yeah, John, I want to take you back to your comment about, I think you were talking about the Mercedes factory cars and how they could move up if they get their aero problems worked out and eliminate the porpoising. I think the problem goes deeper than that. I was reading an article by Mark Hughes, who writes really insightful stuff on Formula One. And he reckons it's the Mercedes engine, now that they boosted the ethanol content in the fuel from 5 to 10%.
Huh.
And, given the incredible black art of mixing Formula One fuels, he thinks that is the reason that the Mercedes cars are close but not quite, because they're just not getting the kind of performance out of the engines on this new fuel chemistry protocol.
Yeah, and of course that does make sense. We've seen all the Mercedes-powered cars struggling.
Yeah, and that's why all these different aerodynamic chassis designs. The one commonality among all those cars is the Mercedes power unit.
Yeah, and who knows, Bob? We've got up and down the grid. I mean, look how good Haas has looked. We'll see after tonight, but we just don't know who's going to be good and fast. We're looking at Ferrari and Red Bull right now and looking fantastic, but we just don't know if somebody else can get that little chemistry problem solved with the fuel with Mercedes power units, or that tweak of the aerodynamics that solves the porpoising. I mean, because I really feel like those could be just tweaks. I don't know that, but we could see dramatic changes today. I mean, look at where McLaren is already. Maybe they've solved one of those problems.
Yeah, I'm interested to see how, I'd love to be the fly on the wall figuring out this aerodynamic bit and the porpoising, because it's kind of a gulp of air that winds up under the car that makes it pitch as it passes under the car. So I'm really curious how they're going to do that without making significant changes, which are probably pressing the edge of track limits or regulatory limits, if you will. I'm interested to see
I've
that.
read an interesting story about that. The one car that was not porpoising obscenely in off-season testing was the Alfa Romeo. And Frederick Vasseur, who runs that team, was terribly upset because the other teams that were having the porpoising problems went to the FIA and said, hey, we need help with this. This is a safety issue. This is blah, 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 blah. So they allowed those cars to put steel or metal stays at the back of the car, connecting the upper bodywork to the edges of the floor just ahead of the rear tires. Basically, a strut to keep the floor from bouncing up and down in the porpoising act. And Vasseur said, our car doesn't have this problem. We don't need this rule. How come everybody else gets to change their car under this new rule just because they got their sums wrong when they were designing their car? And I have a lot of sympathy for that argument.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Hey, some good comments on YouTube and Facebook, because D. Nelson says Bob should sing every pre-race show. Okay, that's a positive comment there, Bob.
Well, we'll ask for a request.
Evan Rudolph from Ecom Seacom, Nova Scotia, Canada, says, I think they should have American broadcasting of F1 again, led by Bob Varsha. There's multiple comments about you in here, Bob. Everybody loves what you do. So
thank you, one and all.
Yep. And BP Caffey says, would love Alpine to score double points. But yeah, we are now, I think we're about 3 minutes before the end of our broadcast. Actually, 2.5. We got a boogaloo. So let's do our predictions. Les, you want to kick us off? I don't like just regular predictions. I want to see who do you think, and then who do you want in your heart?
Oh, I'm going to say Max is going to put his elbows out, and I think that's a good lead there. Hart is going to go back to Daniel Ricciardo for a home team win.
Yeah. All right, Bob, what about you?
I'm going to say, are we picking the podium or just the winner?
Whatever you want.
Okay. I think it's going to be Leclair, Verstappen, Norris on the podium. But I really would like to see Daniel Ricciardo get a win. I'm with Les.
Yeah, can't argue with that. I'm going to say Leclair wins this and Verstappen behind him, but I would love to see Ricciardo there. But I also, probably more than any of that, I want to see double points from Haas.
There you go.
I want to see Magnussen and I want to see Schumacher get some points. I keep, he's obviously young and still learning, but I want to see him get there. And he did, he out-qualify Magnussen today, so that's a big deal. So hopefully they can both score some points. So we're just about a minute left. Let me check and just see if there's any last-minute updates on social media or any of our other feeds. I'm going to check. Let's see. No dramatic, just lots of shots of Daniel Ricciardo with giant smiles on his face. And Charles Leclerc going through his pre-race routine. But don't forget, guys, we are going to stick right here for the entire race. The BBC feed is what you're going to hear shortly. And then we will have our post-race show. So if you are so fired up and you're still up this late, we're going to have our post-race show right after that. And of course, all of this will go on, it'll stay on YouTube and Facebook. And we also have all these on podcast. If you go to either Apple Podcasts or Spotify or any of those, and you can find all that information on our website, speedcitybroadcast.com. Next up, the Australian Grand Prix. Let's go, baby. And we'll talk to you after the race.
Ciao, y'all.